I always believed that love was a sanctuary, a quiet refuge from the chaos of the world. And for the first few years of our marriage, it felt exactly like that. Michael and I had a rhythm-simple breakfast, shared glances across crowded rooms, and whispered I love yous that felt like promises sealed into the fabric of our home. The way he laughed, the casual brush of his hand against mine, the small notes he'd leave in my handbag, I clung to these pieces of normalcy like precious artifacts. But lately something had shifted. I noticed the subtle cracks in our perfect picture. He started coming home later, claiming work demands, yet the faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine lingered on his coat. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing, a lingering smell from the office, perhaps. But my gut whispered otherwise. He smiled, yes, but there was tension behind it, a shadow in his eyes I couldn't name. Even our conversations began to change. He would answer me with clipped sentences, sometimes wandering thoughts, sometimes a sudden irritation over the smallest things. And I, desperate to preserve the illusion, laughed it off, told myself I was imagining it. Still, I started noticing the silence, those small pauses that stretched like cracks across our shared moments. Last night, for instance, he kissed me goodbye at the door, just as he always did, but lingered a moment too long on my forehead, his eyes avoiding mine. Late meeting, he muttered, and I nodded, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Alone in the kitchen afterward, I sipped my wine and traced my fingers along the counter, wondering when the man I loved began slipping away behind a veil I couldn't pierce. I tried to push these thoughts aside, to drown them in the mundane laundry, emails, dishes, but a sense of unease settled deep in my chest, heavy and insistent. Something was coming, something I couldn't yet name. And though our home looked the same, smelled the same, and echoed with our shared laughter, I felt it, the fragile tension that threatened to shatter the illusion of the life I thought we had built together. Tomorrow, I would confront him, or perhaps he would finally reveal what he'd been hiding. Either way, the perfect illusion was already beginning to crack. I couldn't remember the last time I had slept peacefully. Every night, I lay awake, replaying every word, every glance, every careless smile from Emily that might betray suspicion. I told myself I was careful, that no one would ever know, but guilt is a persistent ghost, and it gnawed at me relentlessly. Each time I returned home late, each excuse I offered, it felt like a blade twisting in my chest, sharper than anything she could ever say. Tonight, as I stepped through the front door, I sensed her watching me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That small, imperceptible flicker doubt made my stomach knot. I tried to mask it with warmth, a kiss planted on her temple, a soft word about her day. But her quiet observation was like a spotlight on the lies I'd woven. I thought you had a meeting, she said casually, yet there was tension under her words. An edge I couldn't ignore. I did, I replied quickly, forcing ease into my tone. Ran late, lots to go over. Her eyes searched mine, not maliciously, but with a depth that made me want to confess and yet recoil at the consequences. I had a secret, something I could never undo, something that could destroy her trust in me forever. And the more I tried to push it away, the more it pushed back, shaping every thought, every word, every action. The small arguments began like whispers, harmless at first, forgotten errands, minor lies about bills, but each one left a residue, a shadow stretching over our home. Emily noticed. She always noticed. And I hated the way she paused before believing me, the way she tilted her head, as if weighing truth against fiction. I caught myself wondering if she could see through me, if she could feel the tremor beneath my calm exterior. Each conversation became a balancing act, a careful dance between truth and deception. Her laughter sounded hollow to me, or perhaps it was my own guilt echoing back. I loved her, more than anything, yet every fiber of me trembled under the weight of what I had hidden, knowing that one careless move could unravel everything. As I went to bed that night, I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, pretending sleep would dull the edges of my fear. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. Something was stirring, a reckoning I couldn't escape. And tomorrow, or the day after, the cracks in our lives would widen, and she would begin asking questions I might not be able to answer. The shadows were closing in, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about lies anymore, it was about survival. I had tried all day to push my unease aside, but when Michael finally stepped through the door, the tension between us was palpable. I waited, pretending casualness, my fingers brushing the edge of the kitchen counter as I sipped my tea. "You're late again," I said lightly, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. He froze, just for a fraction of a second, before offering a small, apologetic smile. I know, traffic and then some extra work. His tone was smooth, rehearsed, like a line he had used before. I wanted to believe him, I truly did, but something in his eyes, flickers of guilt, of something unsaid, made my chest tighten. I don't understand, Michael, I pressed, voice soft but steady. You said there was nothing urgent. Why keep me in the dark? He leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew all too well. I didn't mean to worry you. You know me, I had to handle things myself. His eyes searched mine, intense but not accusing. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? I echoed, confusion mingling with the ache in my chest. From what? His sigh filled the room, heavy with unspoken burdens. From worrying over things you don't need to worry about. I didn't want you overthinking. His words were measured, carefully designed to calm me, yet they planted seeds of doubt. Had I misread everything? Was my suspicion unfounded? I shook my head, frustration prickling beneath my skin. I can't keep wondering if you're hiding something from me, I said, my voice trembling. I need honesty, Michael. He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on mine. I am honest, Emily. I promise you. There's nothing to fear. You're imagining things. Maybe I've been distant, but it's not what you think. Trust me. And just like that, my certainty wavered. The lines between reality and doubt blurred. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but his calm insistence was like a tide pulling me back into doubt, into the very illusion I feared was crumbling. That night, as I lay awake, the questions circled endlessly in my mind, gnawing at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, yet I couldn't name it. And somewhere in the shadows, I sensed that our lives were about to tilt further into a darkness neither of us could control. The days after our tense conversation blurred together, each one heavier than the last. I tried to convince myself that Michael's reassurances were enough, yet a subtle unease had taken root, crawling into every corner of our home. The sound of the front door opening made me flinch, my ears straining for a hint of betrayal. It was during one of these restless mornings that Detective Harris entered our lives. At least, that's how he introduced himself. A family friend, he claimed, someone Michael had known for years. His presence was innocuous at first. Polite smiles, casual questions about our routines. But there was something in the way he observed, a quiet intensity, that made me tighten my grip on the coffee mug I held. He never lingered too long, never asked pointed questions. Yet I felt his gaze linger longer than necessary. As if he could see the invisible fractures in our marriage, I started noticing things I hadn't before, small, seemingly meaningless details that refused to settle in my mind. A misplaced document on the kitchen counter, the faint smell of rubber and oil that clung to Michael's jacket, the way he sometimes flinched when I entered a room unexpectedly. Alone, I began piecing them together, forming a puzzle I wished I could discard, but couldn't. That evening, I found it hidden in plain sight. A receipt tucked behind a stack of bills, addressed to a name I didn't recognize, a large sum of money transferred without explanation. My hands shook as I held it, trying to imagine an innocent reason, but the shadows of doubt clawed at my thoughts. Was it just business, as he might claim? Or something darker? The idea that my husband, the man I loved, could be hiding criminal activity twisted in my chest, sharp and unrelenting. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I sat in the dim light of the living room, listening to the hum of the city outside, and wondered how much I had truly known about the life I shared with him. Harris's casual questions now felt like probes, each one tugging at threads I had tried desperately to ignore. Fear crept into the corners of my mind, seeping into my dreams, leaving me questioning every glance, every word, every touch. By the time I went to bed, exhaustion weighed heavily on me, not just physical, but emotional, mental, and moral. I realized that the life I had thought secure was now a labyrinth of secrets and shadows. And somewhere, just out of sight, the pieces were moving, preparing to reveal truths that could shatter everything I believed. About Michael, about us, about myself. That night, the bedroom felt different, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves knew the truths we both hid. Michael lay beside me, his breathing steady, almost measured, while my mind raced through everything I had discovered. The receipt, the unexplained absences, the subtle evasions, each one whispered that the man I had loved might be someone I didn't fully know. Yet I too carried my own secrets. Small betrayals, long-buried frustrations, moments of weakness I hadn't shared. I wondered briefly if he sensed them, the stolen glances, the silent judgments, the longing for moments that didn't belong to us. Our marriage had been intimate once, but now intimacy felt like a battleground where each of us wielded hidden truths like weapons. Flashbacks surfaced unbidden. I remembered nights when I had stayed late at work, feigning innocence, while Michael believed I was at home. A fleeting touch from another colleague, a stolen moment that seemed harmless at the time, now returning to haunt me. And Michael's own absences, those nights he claimed to be handling work, suddenly felt like mirrors reflecting my own concealed actions. We were both dancing on a knife's edge, our affection intertwined with suspicion, our love entangled with guilt. "Are you awake?" Michael's voice cut through the dark, low and careful. I turned toward him, startled by its intimacy and its caution. "Yeah," I whispered. He hesitated, as though weighing his words, then said, "I know things haven't been easy lately. But I need you to trust me, Emily, even if it's hard." I swallowed, sensing both truth and manipulation in his plea. "I want to," I murmured, "but sometimes I don't know what to believe." He reached for my hand, a gesture both tender and commanding, and I felt the fragile balance of our connection tremble. We held each other in silence, hearts beating with unspoken fears and unconfessed desires. For a fleeting moment, we were together without deceit. Yet the shadow of our secrets lingered like smoke, impossible to dispel. As sleep claimed me, I realized that our past and present were inseparable, a tapestry woven with betrayal, intimacy, and lies. And in the morning, the delicate equilibrium we clung to would be tested, pushing us further toward confrontation and forcing truths into the light. I couldn't keep it inside any longer. The documents I had found carefully hidden in the bottom drawer of his study stared back at me, their contents undeniable. Bank transfers to names I didn't recognize, hotel receipts that weren't for business, cryptic messages on his phone I had glimpsed when he left it unattended. My hands shook as I confronted him, fury and fear tangled in my chest. "Michael," I said, voice trembling, holding up the papers. "What is this?" He looked up from his book, startled. "Emily, what are you? Don't play dumb." I snapped, slamming the drawer shut. "I know. I saw the transfers, the messages, everything. How could you hide this from me?" He rose slowly, trying to calm me, his hands raised in a gesture I had once found reassuring. "Wait, Emily. Listen, no. I don't want to listen anymore. How long were you planning to keep this from me?" I felt the weight of betrayal crush me. All those nights, the excuses, the lies. His face hardened for a moment before softening into something almost pleading. "It's not what you think. Not what I think," I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "Michael, I trusted you. I lived my life believing we were honest with each other, and this is what I get." He stepped closer, voice low but urgent. "Emily, please, let me explain. The money, those transfers, it wasn't for you. Don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in, shaking. "You've been betraying me, betraying us. And don't even try to frame it as something noble." There was a long pause, heavy with unspoken truths, our breaths ragged, hearts racing. I stared at him, searching for the man I loved, the one I had shared laughter and secrets with, and all I found was a stranger with eyes full of guilt. He began, faltering. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, you did," I spat, tears pricking my eyes. "You did hurt me. You've destroyed everything." Silence followed, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant city noise. We stood there, two fractured souls, each holding secrets that could no longer be contained. The home we had built felt foreign, alien, a battlefield strewn with lies and betrayal. Finally, I whispered, voice raw, "I don't know if we can fix this or if I even want to." He nodded slowly, resignation in his eyes, as though he too knew that the line had been crossed. And in that moment, the fragile threads of our marriage frayed irreparably, setting the stage for the dark revelations that were yet to come. The morning after our confrontation, the house felt unbearably quiet. I wandered through the rooms, haunted by the knowledge that the man beside me was not entirely the man I had married. Michael sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his coffee, the weight of his past pressed into his posture like an invisible shackle. I couldn't resist it any longer. "Michael," I said cautiously, "there's something you're not telling me. Something beyond this betrayal." He looked up, and for the first time, I saw it, the shadowed version of him, the man shaped by choices he'd never admitted. Emily, he said softly, there's something you need to know, something I should have told you years ago. He told me about a mistake that had followed him from another life, a night long buried. A crime that had never reached the police, but had left scars he carried quietly. It was a minor infraction to some, but to him, it had shaped every decision, every secretive action, every lie he had told since. I felt the room tilt, my stomach lurching as the narrative unfolded. You never mentioned this, I whispered, anger and disbelief mingling. Why? Why keep it hidden all this time? Because I was afraid, he admitted, voice breaking. Afraid that if you knew, you'd see me differently. Afraid you'd leave me, and I couldn't bear it. I wanted to scream, to tell him that trust could not be rebuilt with partial truths, that love alone couldn't erase fear and deception. Yet somewhere in me, a reluctant understanding flickered. This was the man behind the mask. Haunted by a past that demanded secrecy, we sat in silence for a long while, the kitchen clock ticking like a metronome counting out our fractured lives. The man I had adored, who had whispered promises of forever, now felt like a stranger shaped by shadows I could barely comprehend, and I realized, with chilling clarity, that our pasts were not separate from our present. They were woven into the very fabric of our marriage, shaping betrayal, secrecy, and manipulation. As Michael left for work that morning, the distance between us felt unbridgeable. I stared at the door long after it closed, knowing that the revelations of the past would inevitably collide with the present, and the cracks in our lives were about to widen further, leading us down a path from which there might be no return. The air in the house had grown thick, suffocating, as if the walls themselves carried the weight of our secrets. Every glance between us was charged, every word a loaded threat. Michael and I no longer spoke in the gentle tones of love. Our sentences snapped and splintered, jagged with accusation. I can't do this anymore, I said, pacing the living room, my fingers trembling. I can't pretend there isn't a chasm between us, Michael. Everything we had, it's gone. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched across his face. Emily, please. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to hurt you? You did, I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. You lied. You hid things. You manipulated me. I trusted you with everything, and all you've given me is deceit. He took a step closer, eyes desperate, voice low. You don't understand, it's not what you think. I tried to protect you, to protect us. Protect us? I scoffed bitterly, tears pricking my eyes. From what, Michael? From the truth? From knowing the man I married? You've turned our home into a cage of shadows, and I'm suffocating. The room felt smaller, the shadows longer. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, a storm mirroring the turmoil inside. I clenched the papers I had found days ago, the proof of betrayal, the evidence of lies. Every document screamed his duplicity, and I felt the fragile veneer of our marriage crack irreversibly. I can't fix this, I whispered, voice breaking. I don't know if I even want to. How can we go back when everything is built on lies? Michael's shoulders sagged, a mixture of guilt and resignation. I never wanted to lose you, he admitted. But I see now that trust is gone. And maybe it's too late. The room fell into silence, broken only by our ragged breaths and the distant rumble of thunder. I stared at him, seeing both the man I loved and the stranger who had betrayed me. We were caught in the aftermath of our own deceptions, suspended between rage and heartbreak, unable to undo what had been done. For the first time, I truly understood the depth of our fracture. Trust was no longer a bridge between us, it was a ruin, crumbled and impassable. And as I turned away to the shadows gathering in the corners of the room, I realized that the next step, what came after the lies, the rage, and the heartbreak, would test the limits of everything we were, setting the stage for consequences we could neither predict nor control. The house was quiet, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. I stood in the kitchen, my fingers trembling around the edge of the counter, the papers I had discovered still burning in my mind. Michael sat across from me, silent, watching me with eyes that once held warmth but now only reflected fear and guilt. Emily, he whispered, voice cracking. Please don't do something you'll regret. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. I can't keep pretending. I can't ignore what you've done. Everything we built, everything I believed, it's gone. I can't live with the lies anymore. His hand moved toward mine, hesitant, almost pleading. There's still a choice, we can fix this. Please, don't let anger decide for us. But anger had long since settled in my chest, entwined with betrayal and despair. I had spent nights imagining what I could do, what could finally make him understand the depth of his deception. My mind raced through possibilities, each one darker than the last. The house felt smaller, the shadows longer, as if closing in to bear witness to the moment I knew would define the rest of my life. I trusted you, Michael. I shouted, my voice shaking, echoing through the empty rooms. I loved you, and you used that love. You lied, you deceived, and I can't forgive it. His lips trembled. Emily, listen. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't care anymore. I interrupted, heart pounding like a drumbeat of finality. I can't believe anything you say. Not tonight. Not ever. Time seemed to stretch, every second an eternity. The moral weight of my next action pressed down on me like a vice. My hand hovered over the edge of the counter, the sharp blade I had kept hidden for emergencies, trembling in my grip. The choice was mine, an irreversible decision that could destroy us both, physically or emotionally. Emily, please, he whispered, voice pleading, almost breaking. Whatever you're thinking, think about what it means. I swallowed hard, heart racing, mind splitting between rage and fear. The moment demanded a decision, one that would haunt us forever. I could feel the life between us, the fragile remnants of love, dangling on a knife's edge, and then it happened. I acted not out of thought, but instinct, desperation, and the raw need for control over a life that had spiraled beyond comprehension. The echo of that choice reverberated immediately, filling the room with a suffocating silence that seemed to confirm the finality of what I had done. As I sank to the floor, trembling and breathless, the enormity of my decision washed over me. Nothing could be undone. Everything we were, every secret and betrayal, had led to this moment. And in that instant, I realized life had changed forever for both of us. And for the fragile moral lines I had just crossed, the flashing lights of police cars outside our home made the world feel unreal. A distorted reflection of the life I had once known. Uniformed officers moved with precision, cataloging the scene, questioning neighbors, and slowly piecing together the events that had shattered our home. I stood in the doorway, trembling, the weight of the previous night pressing down on me like a leaden shroud. Detective Harris approached, his expression carefully neutral, though I sensed the judgment beneath. Ma'am, we need a statement, he said, voice calm but firm. Everything you tell us will help clarify what happened. I nodded numbly, words caught somewhere between truth and disbelief. How could I explain a night that had spun so far beyond my control? How could I articulate the moments, the betrayals, the rage, and the desperation that had led to a choice I could never undo? Flashbacks crashed into me, relentless and vivid. I remembered our early days, laughter in sunlit rooms, whispered promises in the dark, small acts of love that once seemed eternal. I remembered the first lie, the hidden transfers, the late-night absences, and the subtle manipulations that had eroded trust like water on stone. Each memory felt like a knife, carving clarity into the chaotic blur of the present. You need to understand, I whispered, more to myself than to Harris. This wasn't just one night. It was years of secrets, deception, a slow unraveling that no one saw coming. The detective listened patiently, jotting notes, occasionally glancing at his partner. Their presence, orderly and procedural, contrasted sharply with the emotional wreckage I felt. The law could process facts, but it could not measure the weight of betrayal, the fracture of trust, or the moral ambiguity that had guided my hand. I moved through the house, observing the shadows and remnants of the life we had shared. Each room echoed with the ghosts of what we had been, juxtaposed with the reality of what I had become. It was a life forever altered, innocence lost, morality blurred, and love rendered unrecognizable. By the time the statements were taken, the initial shock had dulled into a hollow ache. The legal consequences would follow, the investigation would unfold, but what remained most pressing was the internal reckoning. I realized, with a mixture of dread and reluctant understanding, that justice could only account for actions, it could never fully account for motive, heartbreak, or the slow erosion of trust that had led to this fatal night. And as I sat alone in the dim light of what was left of our home, I understood the undeniable truth. Love could turn lethal, and its consequences, once unleashed, could never be fully contained. The house was empty now, stripped of its life and laughter. The rooms, once filled with whispered promises and shared moments, echoed with absence. I moved from room to room, each step heavy, each shadow a reminder of the man I had loved and the stranger he had become. The memory of that night, of the choice I had made, lingered in every corner. As inescapable as the fading sunlight through drawn curtains, I often found myself replaying our life together, sifting through memories with surgical precision. The laughter that once felt so genuine now felt like a mask, a veneer over secrets and lies. The warmth of his hands, the softness of his words, they haunted me as reminders of what had been real and what had been deception. Could love, I wondered, ever exist without shadow? Or was it always intertwined with betrayal, waiting to unravel when trust faltered? The police had closed their case months ago, labeling it as self-defense, an unfortunate culmination of secrecy and deceit. Legal consequences were behind me, but the psychological weight remained, an invisible scar etched deep within my soul. Nights were the hardest, sleep fragmented, dreams filled with echoes of arguments, confessions, and that final choice. I woke often, heart racing, imagining Michael's face, sometimes forgiving, sometimes accusing, always a mirror to my guilt and sorrow. Friends reached out at first, their voices sympathetic, their questions gentle. But I withdrew, unable to explain the complex intertwining of love and destruction that had defined my life. Words felt inadequate, incapable of conveying the depth of manipulation, the insidious erosion of trust, or the moral ambiguity that had guided my hand. Even now, I question myself, had I been justified, or had I crossed a line from which there was no return? Sometimes I walk past the window where we first met, where laughter once spilled into the street, and I wonder if the person I loved existed only in memory. The betrayal was not singular, it was layered, insidious, embedded in years of half-truths, omissions, and unspoken fears. And though justice had been served in one sense, the emotional reckoning continues, a slow burn that reshapes who I am. I have learned that some echoes cannot be silenced, that some wounds never heal completely. The love I once believed in is now inseparable from its shadow, dark, haunting, and irrevocable. And as I step into the uncertain future, I carry both the pain of betrayal and the indelible mark of survival. Haunted by the question that will never leave me, was our love ever real, or merely an illusion waiting to shatter?